Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornbluth, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Yeah, it's different, but I mean, the way they're handling it, and you just got to prepare like you're going to start, and if not, you got to realize that if you don't start, you're one play away. So you got to be ready like you're going to start.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back into Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network, here on a Friday night, another football Friday night here in South Carolina. High school football Friday night, big schedule of games all across the state tonight and some very good matchups as well. We'll be talking with David Shelton in a few minutes about that, getting you ready for high school football Friday night here in South Carolina. Phil Kornbluth on the road once again at an undisclosed hidden location. Back at our studios in downtown Columbia, Kevin McCrary, along with Jared Rogers Martin, better known far and wide as Jarmart. Professor Tom Hayes has been off this week. He'll be back with us next week as we roll into the college football season. Plenty of news to catch you up on. The Gamecocks were talking today after practice. We'll hear from Perry Orth, and we'll hear from A.J. Turner. And they will talk about getting ready for Vanderbilt's T.J. Holloman as well on the defensive side, getting ready for Vanderbilt and preparing the best they can to play the best game they can, one with few mistakes, one with 600 yards of offense, 45 points, limit the other team to about 6 points, maybe 150 yards. I think they'd sign off on that, take the win and come back home. A lot of news out of Auburn as well, none of it good. If you're Gus Malzahn came back, you're sort of looking at your players and like, you guys trying to get me fired by doing stupid stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it has been a bad offseason at Auburn in terms of their own issues. And maybe around the SEC, there's been a lot of crime blotter, even more than normal in the summer. And, yeah, losing a safety. You might want to have safeties that can play, and a lot of them when you're facing a team like Clemson that, I don't know, has the best quarterback in the country and about 15 wide receivers deep. You might need those defensive backs.
You are exactly right. And they may be without one when Clemson rolls into town a week from Saturday, because the news came out this morning that their starting safety, Stephen Roberts, was arrested Wednesday night trying to elude an officer carrying a firearm without a license. He was released on $1,000 bond for each charge. They are Class A misdemeanors. He has a court date of November 17th. Malzahn still gathering the facts on the arrest, according to a statement from Auburn on the matter. He had 26 tackles, Roberts did, 26 tackles and 3 pass breakups in 2015. And, yeah, with a dangerous offense rolling into town, led by the nation's best player on offense, Deshaun Watson, one thing you don't want to have is to start somebody in that back end of the secondary who's not experienced and not ready to play. Auburn might be looking at that.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, there's a lot of different places to exploit that defense. If you're Auburn, at least last year, I still get back to this, Corn, and it's just this feeling in my gut that there's no empirical evidence to back this up, but I still think Auburn is going to go out there, even with all this bad news, even with Sean White getting the starting job at quarterback, and that doesn't seem to be exciting many people, and the running back kicked off the team and another player arrested. I just have a feeling that this game is going to get a little hairy for Clemson.
And what makes you feel that way? What empirical evidence do you have?
Well, I mean, it's like conclusion? I said, in terms of empirical evidence, that's always difficult in an opener. But if you just look at intangibles like the fact that Auburn is playing at home at night, and we all know the percentages. Home teams usually win. I mean, so the percentages on are on their side there. It is only a 7-point spread in Vegas. Vegas doesn't think this thing's – they're trying to get people to bet on both sides of that number. I get it, but it's not a big number. So that's something to take into account. That's some evidence that there are people in the know in the desert that think it's going to be a competitive game. And if it's a 7-point game, that's a play or two that's going to determine that bad boy. So you have that. Clemson, with all these new guys that they are breaking in on defense, especially the defensive end position, and an Auburn offense that tries to get you looking the wrong way, tries to get you to take a bad angle, and boom, they're gone. With all that movement and all those different ways that Gus Malzahn disguises things, the guy still knows how to do that. I know he struggled last year, and that offense struggled last year, but it's still Gus Malzahn and his offense. I think they're going to be able to get some points. So, I mean, that's make it a little hairy. I'm not predicting a win yet, but you know what? I might just get crazy here between now and next Friday.
Yeah, you get crazy. You get crazy.
And when's the last time Clemson won in Auburn?
Well, it's been a long time. I don't think I was alive, because I think Clemson's won the last two, but other than that, I don't know that they beat Auburn since like the Truman administration.
The last time Clemson won in Auburn, November 25th, 1950.
Oh, yeah, Corn was just 16 years old.
It's been a minute.
Yeah, but you know what? That's totally irrelevant. Has nothing to do with this year's teams. When you last won someplace has nothing to do with the team you're going to put on the field this time around.
Oh, he's that
but
guy. Well, of course, nothing matters. Last year doesn't matter in that regard, but it's still – well, Auburn doesn't lose a lot at home to begin with. I mean, they are a pretty tough team at Jordan-Hare. It's the first game of the season. They've got the new video board up in there. Looking forward to seeing that, because their video boards were terrible the last time I was there. It was surprising for a program like that. But
you're sounding like fanboy here. Video boards don't make a difference in the outcome of a game.
What doesn't make the difference in the outcome of a game? The video board?
Video board.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying the fans do make a difference. Would we both agree that fans can have an impact on the way a game plays out, that they can have an impact on that? Like, teams get fired up when they play at home. That's an impact. You can have an advantage.
I certainly agree with that.
Okay. So
but you better be at least equal to your opponent, if not superior. And I don't know that anybody would agree that Auburn is on an equal playing field talent-wise across the board with Clemson right now. And we've pointed out in leading up to this game where Auburn has some good defensive players. I think their defensive front is going to challenge Clemson's offensive line, but Clemson's offensive line, basically intact from last year's offensive line, is going to be pretty good. Mm-hmm. All those offensive weapons that had last 40 points per game, they're back. We talked about some concern on Clemson's defense. That's legit. I think there's some concern there at the defensive end position, but you are talking about an Auburn offense, as you pointed out at the opening, not going to really scare anybody on paper until they prove it. And can they go out and prove it against this Clemson defense, which, despite losing some players, is still going to be really good.
Yeah. Well, I agree. I mean, I think Clemson wins. I'm going to say this now. I've been saying this for a while, so this is nothing new. Fourth quarter game. And I think it's going to be a one-possession game in the fourth quarter, and Clemson's going to have to go out there and earn this win. And maybe maybe there aren't a lot of – maybe the majority of people agree with me there. I mean, but people that are thinking it's going to be a walk in the park for Clemson and they're going to go out there and just blow them out, that might happen, but I would not expect that to happen with this Auburn team playing at home. And we saw that all SEC team. We saw how many players from Auburn were on the first and second team. So it's not like they don't have any talent there. They're playing at home. They have some guys that are proven players. They're going to be better on defense. I'm not going to sleep on this Auburn Tiger team. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Well, you know what? It gives us something to really talk about and sink our teeth into here in the week leading up to it. I'm glad that you think it might be a tight ball game. And I see what you're saying. There are things that you have to take into consideration when you are going on the road into a major SEC program's house like Auburn, as Clemson is. We'll be right back. we're back. Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network here on a Friday night. Good to have you with us. Phil Kornblut along with Kevin McCrary back at our studios in Columbia. Going to talk some high school football in just a moment. Sports Talk presented by South Carolina soybean farmers and their checkoff. Learn more at scsoybeans.org. Pork powered by soy. Let's welcome in David Shelton from the High School Sports Report and the Charleston Post and Courier. Week number 1, high school football in the state, even though it is the second Friday night with week 0 last week. Always so confusing. But the good thing, David, as far as I can tell across the state, unlike last Friday night, we've got good weather. We should make it through the night without too many problems.
Man, it is a beautiful night for football, to borrow a phrase that has been often used. But it's a little warm, but a little humid, but not bad at all. I mean, it's a pleasant night, at least where I'm headed towards Monk's Corner to watch Berkeley and Stratford. But looking forward to that, and looking forward to not having to slosh through the sidelines full of water or have games canceled or postponed. It made for a hectic week 0, that's for sure.
Yeah. One that carried into Saturday and points beyond. Now, this Friday night, it seems like we've got a lot of rivalry games being played out, in some cases opening games for teams. You've got, for example, Brooklyn-Cayce Airport, Lawrence-Clinton, Blythewood, Ridgeview, Crestwood, Sumter, your game, Stratford, Berkeley. A lot of good rivalry games being played tonight.
Yeah, it is. It's at first glance you look at the schedule and you go, well, not as many good games as there was in week 0. But when you kind of delve in, and as I say all the time, every game in every community is a big game for those people in that community. But from a statewide flavor, there are some really interesting games. That one you mentioned, Airport BC, is going to be really cool because both quarterbacks are the sons of the head coaches, and that's kind of neat. And then you go down, and not really a rivalry game, but Timberland and Woodland are playing, and Timberland's coach, Art Craig, well, the offensive coordinator at Woodland is his son, Cody Craig, which is the first time they've ever played against each other. And I did a little interesting piece on them earlier in the week about the game, and, boy, I tell you what, they don't hide it. They both want to beat each other pretty bad. So it is definitely family bragging rights. But, another couple of games that are how's this for and I don't know the answer, but maybe somebody can look it up. When's the last time that Northwestern, Dorman, Burns, and Greer were winless after one game? All 4 of those teams are really good traditional powerhouses, and Northwestern plays Dorman tonight, and Burns plays Greer. So there are going to be a couple of 0-2 teams that hardly anyone expected to be 0-2 after tonight. And another couple of games that are of interest. Gaffney Union County is always a big rivalry game. Spartanburg Keohane is not a rivalry game, but obviously 2 really good teams. And Cane Bay and Goose Creek is becoming a rivalry, even though Cane Bay's never won in their series. The last 2 meetings have been very, very close. So I look for that to be a really competitive game tonight.
Yeah, you make a good point about those other games. I was going to mention Northwestern and Dorman as being one to watch tonight in terms of traditional powers coming off opening season losses. But really, a lot of people got to keep an eye on that Burns team tonight and see how they respond from their loss to Myrtle Beach last weekend here in Myrtle Beach. They really did not play well at all. Have you heard much coming out of Duncan over the week as far as how they've responded and what to look for tonight?
I haven't heard much. I did speak with someone that I know up there, and they're not panicking. Although I did detect a slight tone of panic in his voice. He was trying to play it off a little bit. This particular fan of the program, but they got embarrassed last week, and not necessarily on the scoreboard. You sometimes the other team scores a few more points, but the way they played and the way they got beat with the turnovers and the sacks and the lack of offensive production, just not what they're used to seeing at Burns. And it'll be an interesting test for them tonight. Greer is also kind of rebuilding, but they'll be a good team, and Burns will have to play well, and Greer will have to play well, or one of them's going to be 0-2.
Story coming out today in the Post and Courier, and I haven't read it yet, but heck, you might have written it. I'm not sure. Fort Dorchester transfers, they're being approved by the high school league. Was there some? Yeah, you did write it as I opened it up now. I just saw the headline. So give me the background on that. Was there some concern about some players?
Well, yeah. I mean, anytime you have kids transferring right before the start of the season, there's going to be, quote unquote red flags. The situation here is that the folks at Colleton County are not real happy, and one of the guys that left is their best player and one of the best receivers, and a guy that caught 230 yards worth of passes last Saturday in Statesboro and scored 4 touchdowns, and they're playing each other tonight. So there was they raised some concerns, some red flags, saying, hey, this isn't legal and blah, 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 and things like that, without going into too many details. I don't know the exact complaint. All I know is it's been going on all week, and the high school league checked into the complaint and said they're both eligible. However, I did ask the question of Skip Lax. I said, is this done? Or do we have to worry about it? He goes, well, if they show up Monday with some more proof, something we need to look at, we will definitely look at it. But I think a lot of it is because they're playing tonight and leading up to the game. Colleton County hasn't been happy about it the whole time, and Chris Collins has been very public about the transfer, that it wasn't above board. But they played last week in Statesboro. I was there, so I just assumed they were eligible or they wouldn't have played. And but it got kind of, I don't know, during the week, but not unexpected. I mean, I didn't think it was that big a story. I was told to write it, so I wrote it. But I think, I said if they played last week, I'm pretty sure they're eligible. And if something else comes up, when you move from there's some, Walterboro to North Charleston. Okay, did the whole family move? Is it a legal move? Do they have a new residence? All that kind of stuff. And you got folks in Walterboro who maybe don't think it is. So they pushed it, and the high school league checked on it and said everything was good.
Okay, that's good. So I don't want to hear come December and come playoff time, or November come playoff time, a report from the high school league about Fort Dorchester being called to Columbia to deal with some questions about some transfers, because you know how this works. Sometimes people have information or whatever. They wait until the most critical time they come forward with it, and it messes up the entire postseason scenario for some people.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't think that's going to happen anymore very often, because the high school league stance has kind of been one of, if the school districts that are involved and the principals, if they all approve this, then we're going to go with what they go. Because as Jerome Singleton told me a couple of years ago, he said, if we aggressively pursued and tried to clear up every single transfer, that's all we would do for 5 days a week for 8 hours a day, because they happen all over the state. So a lot of school districts have now, in the Columbia area and Spartanburg and here down in Dorchester County, they kind of say, hey, if everybody in the district that's involved approves it, then we're gonna approve it. Now, something like this is not inter-district. This is one county to another, and obviously the folks at Colleton County were a little ticked off that those kids left. And I will tell you this: that I don't know who the other player is, but the one that I do know, Justin Williams, is a heck of a football player. So I could see where they would be a little ticked, because he put on a show for last Saturday night in Statesboro.
Yeah, and he's going to have a chance, since he's a junior. He's going to have a chance to catch a lot of balls this year and a lot of balls next year from Kerry Joyner. David, thank you so much, my friend. Have a great night. We'll talk to you later tonight, 10 o'clock, high school football scoreboard here on South Carolina Radio Network. The scoreboard's at 10, 10:30, and 11. We bring you more scores in 5 minutes than anybody else brings you in 2 hours. And we thank David Shelton for being with us tonight here on Sports Talk. When we come back, catch up on South Carolina and some of the things the players are saying after practice today. Huh?
You guys, I mean, any nervousness about maybe being told just the night before, hey, you might be starting?
No. No, not necessarily.
We continue on Sports Talk here. Happy Friday to you. Somehow we made it to the end of the weekend. USC football hit the practice field this morning. I'm still trying to figure out how the Gamecocks are able, now that school started, how they're able to get morning practices in around school schedules. Normally they move to the afternoon, but somehow they've worked it out. Maybe the players all have the afternoon classes so they can do the morning practices. And they practice again this morning as they are in full-fledged game week mode. Now, one thing we don't know with less than a week to go is who the starting quarterback will be. Perry Orth is in the mix. He talked to the media today, and he's not really getting too caught up in whether or not he's going to be the starter against Vanderbilt.
No, not necessarily. I mean, we'd both like to know. We both played very well this camp, but whatever the decision the coaches make, we'll be supportive of that.
It's pretty much the laundry, you and Matt and Brandon.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Where does Jake fit into this?
Jake's been getting some reps as well. He, he's still coming along because he just got here in June, but he's getting there.
You see a difference in the team now that y'all actually started preparing for an opponent?
No. I mean, the practices are pretty much still similar. We're just doing, the scout team stuff, getting ready for, what Vanderbilt brings to the table.
What was the mindset? You've gone into the game knowing you're the starter, and now you're going in not knowing if you're going to start the game. Is the mindset different preparing for that?
No, definitely not. You always got to prepare like you're going to start. I did the same thing last year. I'm going to do that this year. So, yeah.
You see out of Vanderbilt's defense when you turn on the film?
You said, what do I see?
Yeah, out of Vanderbilt's.
They're tough. They play hard. They tackle really well. They've got good defensive line. They're number 41. I think Zach Cunningham is his name. He's a heck of a ball player. I remember him from last year. Just a sound defense. They're in top 25 last year, and we've been watching film on them for a while to get ready because we understand how good they are.
Is that a little tricky using last year's film to kind of prepare for this team, being that they might be a bit different?
I mean, potentially, but we're not watching last year's South Carolina versus Vanderbilt game. We're watching Vanderbilt's defense, not so much what we did. So, I mean, I'm sure they'll show some different things, but for the most part, they're going to probably stick to what Coach Mason over there knows.
Thinking back to when you first got on the field at South Carolina in actual game action, what was it like? The difference between practice and game, and did anything surprise you from that standpoint?
No, nothing actually. They're very, very similar between a scrimmage and a game. The only difference is that you get hit, which is a big deal, but then again, it's part of the game. So, I mean, there really wasn't that big of a difference. If you prepare and you understand what the looks they're going to give you and what the coaches are asking, it's virtually the same thing.
What do you tell a young team going on the road for the first time? You obviously played the SEC on the road. What do you tell them?
Go out and have fun, honestly. I mean, you can't really worry about playing on the road or at home. I mean, once the game starts, you're just playing football. You don't even realize the crowd's there. Now, when you're trying to communicate with people, it's difficult. But besides that, it's just football.
Harry, anything changed this week now that you're officially in game week, or is it just the same intensity?
The same intensity, probably even more now because it is game week. Everyone's just trying to get prepared, ready to go. It's crazy to think that we're 6 days out.
Sorry if you've been asked this, but is it kind of weird going into a game and Coach said he hasn't given you guys much of a hint of who's going to go first?
Yeah, it's different, but I mean, it's the way they're handling it, and you just got to prepare like you're going to start, and if not, you got to realize that if you don't start, you're one play away. So you got to be ready like you're going to start.
Can you see a difference in energy as you get closer to game day?
With the team?
With the team day by day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just talking with kids on campus, everybody's excited. Coach Muschamp's brought a new energy, and he's done everything right up to this point, and now we got to go win some games for him.
Perry Orth, he has a win over Vanderbilt on his resume, which is why I do believe he's going to be the first guy to get a snap against the Doors next week. I would not be surprised in the least to see McElwain play as well, but if I were betting on the starter, I would bet Perry Orth. Let's move over to the other side of the ball now, and there's going to be a lot of attention paid to what Will Muschamp has done with that defense and that unit and how they've improved from last year to now. All the early returns from the players they're a lot better. TJ Holloman, one of the players that's feeling better about things now. Let's take a listen to what he had to say after practice today.
TJ, what's it been like to actually prepare for an opponent now?
It's exciting. We're tired of hitting each other. This grilling camp was good for us, but it was also rough on our bodies. So it's fun just to think about another opponent and getting the chance to go out there and hit another opponent.
What are you seeing from Rockwood on film? Their running back.
He's their best player for sure. He's a talented guy. He runs hard, downhill runner. So he's a guy we're going to have to prepare for. We're going to have to tackle him as a group, and we're going to have to put a lot of effort into that.
How does the tone change when you guys start preparing for a specific opponent as opposed to just preparing for the season?
It's a lot more mental. They're putting in specific stuff for a specific team and specific players. And so now it's more of a mental aspect than a physical aspect.
And y'all started on that Thursday?
Yes.
And did they give you more and more of that as the days go on?
Right. They put us. They give us the game plan of a call sheet or whatnot, and we just rep those against certain formations.
With a relatively young team, what do you tell younger guys about going on the road and the experience they're going to have?
Have fun, embrace it. It's going to be a challenge, but at the end of the day, the game's all about fun. As long as you know your stuff and you put the effort and time into learning your stuff, you should be fine.
Is it a good way to get an early gauge on where those young guys are, putting them in that situation?
Yeah, it's a lot of adversity. Coach Muschamp always preaches we have to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And so, that's what these young guys are going to have to go through, and being on the road at Vandy and all the other games we have to go on the road to.
All right, there's a little bit of what TJ Holloman had to say. By the way, if you want to get more, you can check us out on the website. The post-practice audio has been posted there as we bring Corn back in. Maybe you have the answer to this question, Corn, because I don't. And
I have the answer to every question.
Well, good. Well, you have a answer, maybe not the correct answer, but I know you do have a lot of answers. How does USC manage to practice in the morning with school already started?
Yeah, I know. I thought the same way when they announced their practice plans. So this will be, something that's going to go on through the season, and it's just something the players have to adapt to. Getting up early, going to practice, showering, freshening up, and going off to class, and then coming back for meetings, I guess, in the afternoon. That would seem to me to be kind of tough to focus on academics. They're not the only ones who do that, though. I have heard of other places where they practice in the morning so that they can go and have most of the rest of the day free and clear for practices. I can't tell you off the top of my head where those might be, but yeah, that's unusual. We'll see how it works out. And well, maybe on Monday when Muschamp has his his pre-Vanderbilt presser, we can ask him the thinking behind that sort of arrangement.
Yeah, that was intriguing. So usually teams do practice in the afternoons, and they have some evening practices. So maybe that's what happens. The players go to class from 11 or 11:30 or noon till 5, and that's when they have to do all their classes. I mean, they get the first priority to pick their class times. I know they're not skipping class to go, and I posed this question earlier, and I said, I bet you there's going to be somebody out there thinking I'm implying that they're not going to class. I've just never seen it. It's different how they work that out.
Well, I mean, look, when you think about it, and you're a football player, I don't know if this works better than the other way around. It would seem to me that it would be tough after going through and especially the way they're practicing now under Muschamp, a hard physical practice, say on a Tuesday, when that's the day of the week ordinarily when you have your most physical practice, and go and bump heads and do all that kind of stuff and get dinged up, and then have to go sit in 6 hours worth of classes at various places around the campus. Seemed to me like you'd be kind of worn out, hard to focus on your academics. Then again, maybe they have done some studies and some research, and they find that it helps the players in class, and it helps their grades to have the practice early and then go to classes later. I know some basketball teams do that as well. They practice in the morning and then go to class later, but that's a different animal comparing basketball and football. But you know what? One thing I'm learning is there's a lot of different ways to do it. Being at Coastal Carolina yesterday and talking with the folks there, they don't hit very much in practice at all. And when practice is over, Joe Moglia and the staff, they go home. They finish up 6 o'clock, 6:30. There's no hanging around, breaking down film, having meetings. They're done for the day. The staff go home. The players go to their dorms, start getting ready for the next day. It's worked for them so far. It just shows you there's different ways to do things. There's no absolute one way to get it done in football. We'll see how this works for the Gamecocks. All right, good hearing from South Carolina players there. We'll be back. Some recruiting coming up and more. Okay, we're back. Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network here on a Friday night. Phil Kornblut and Kevin McCrary and Jar March. Jared Rogers Martin with you. If you want to join in on the conversation, 800-956-7266. We really haven't tossed out the number to take calls, but we can do that a little bit. 800-956-7266. You head into a high school game, let us know who you're going to see. If you're a Clemson fan and you concur with what K-Mac was saying about this Clemson-Auburn game coming up being much tighter than people are thinking it's going to be, tell us that he's right or he's wrong. 800-956-7266. I think that as far as USC Vanderbilt goes, I think most people believe that's going to be a close game. Either way, whoever happens to win it, I don't think anybody's expecting any kind of a blowout in that one. I would imagine that, too, would be a fourth-quarter game. I'm not saying the Clemson-Auburn game will be a fourth-quarter game. I mean, I know there's some things to be concerned about if you're Clemson. I just can't convince myself that the Tigers aren't going to win this thing by double digits.
Double digits?
Oh, yeah, double digits. That would be more than 9 points.
More than 9.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. Well, because I have the utmost respect for what they can do offensively.
Right.
And I just I can't see Auburn. I know Auburn's got some good players on defense. I don't think they have enough. And now with this latest issue with the safety, possibly we don't know yet if he's not going to play.
Yeah, I mean, there's no telling with Malzahn. He might suspend him for a series. I mean, once the charges get dropped, he might play. You never know, especially when you're talking about a desperate coach, and he's already taken some heat for how he's handled certain things or not handled certain things over there. But I'm not taking anything away from Clemson, especially offensively. Nobody really slowed them down at the end of last year. Their offense was stopped by anybody. Oklahoma couldn't slow them down. Alabama and that great defense couldn't slow them down. Clemson's going to score. There's no question. But I do think Auburn has the capability to move the ball and keep the ball away from Clemson a little bit, play that keep away game, run the ball, and score some points, too, to hang around. And first game of the season, you never know. Teams come out of the chute a little slow. Even last year, Clemson offensively came out of the gate a little bit slow, and you're trying to break in different guys. I don't think there's going to be a huge learning curve when you have the best offensive player in the country at your disposal and Mike Williams is back. There are a ton of reasons to go along with what you're saying, Corn, that Clemson's going to win going away. But I just think that you got to be careful going into this game. If you're a Clemson fan, or definitely Clemson, and I know they're not taking them lightly, but to think that just because Auburn was down last year and just because Clemson is coming off a championship game appearance that they're going to go in there and just lay the hammer down. This is a kind of game that you see almost every year. There's always early in the first two, three, and there's always that one game that you go, wow. I mean, Clemson, the number 2 team lost, or a top 5 team is going to lose in the first couple weeks of the season. Mark it down. That will happen.
Are you suggesting that Clemson is the most likely of the top 5 teams to lose on opening weekend?
No, I'm not going that far, and I'm not saying Clemson will lose. I've been saying for a while that I think this game is going to be tough. I think Clemson's going to have to grind it out. I think when you look back on the season, it might be one of their tougher games that they played this year. And I think Auburn might be a little bit better than a lot of people think this year. I mean, looking at their roster a little closer, and that's what happens when you get closer to the game week. I mean, we start really looking at the 2 deep depth chart. You start looking at what they have coming back, and you go, you know what? These guys aren't half bad. It's not like they stopped recruiting there. It's not a rebuild job at Auburn. They've had some turmoil, and, it might go completely south for them this year, but Clemson's going to get their best shot a week from Saturday. You better believe that. And they're going to get the fans' best shot, and it's going to be big, and it's going to be a huge stage. So, yeah.
But Clemson is used to it. They've been on the biggest stage you can be on. Many of these players, most of these players were in the Orange Bowl. They were in the ACC. They were in the national championship game. They are not going to be intimidated by their surrounding.
No, you don't have to be affected by something. They're going to get a big shot from Auburn, and just like they got a big shot from Louisville. It's the same sort of deal. Louisville wasn't as talented as Clemson, but it was a Thursday night game. Louisville had their back against the wall, and they got Louisville's best shot, and they survived. They got Notre Dame's best shot and survived. Clemson's going to get most everybody's best shot, and if Dabo was sitting across from me, that's what he would say. He'd say, hey, we get everybody's best shot. We're Clemson. Nobody rest on us, and that's true. But they have a bigger target on them this year than they did last year. And Dabo's tried to poo-poo that statement too, but he was a guy that even midway through last year was talking about they don't get any respect and didn't like the Clemsoning questions. They're not getting those anymore. They're not getting Clemsoning questions anymore. They're getting national championship questions.
Not yet.
Well, if they lose to Auburn, it won't. Don't make me start regurgitating. If we lose to Auburn, it's not because we Clemson. It's because we lost to a better team that day. Hey.
All right, recruiting here. Got a few notes to pass along to you on this Friday night. Of course, tomorrow could be big day for USC regarding landing a commitment. Most who follow South Carolina recruiting are convinced that Jamias Williams, defensive back from Loganville, Georgia, is going to commit to the Gamecocks. But, this is what drives coaches to drink heavily and drives people that follow recruiting to drink and occasionally smoke some evil weed. Here's a quote from Jamias Williams recently. I think it was last week in a story on him, and he said the following: when I commit, I'll be 95% committed. The other 5% I will leave for the official visits to maybe sway me if I actually see anything else I really like from another school. But when I make that commitment, I'll be mainly 95% committed. End of quote. So he's going to do this on ESPN2. They're actually going to they're there to do his game. They're playing IMG Academy out of Bradenton, Florida. And so they're going to tape his announcement interview at about 3:30 and then play it back during the game. Of course, it'll be out by the time he plays in the ball game, and they air that thing. But even whoever gets him, South Carolina, Georgia, Ohio State, believed to be the final three with him. He's not shutting it down, apparently. And this is where, you'd really like to see a head coach and a high school coach step in and take control and say, look, I'm not going through all of this. The college coach can't say this. Well, a college coach can say, look, if you're committing to me, then you're shutting it down because I'm shutting down recruiting at your position and you're shutting it down. If not, then don't commit to us. And, Dabo Swinney has been one of those few head coaches who's been very public about saying that and sticking to it, I believe, for the most part. But this is where a high school coach has got to step in, too, and say, look, young fella, if we're going to go through all this and you're going to have this announcement and it's going to be on television, this is it. There is no more visiting. There is no more looking at other schools. But apparently nobody's willing to do that.
Yeah.
Wide receiver Chad Terrell of Dallas, Georgia, has set an official visit to Oregon September 3rd. He said he'll also set a visit with USC and possibly with NC State, and he added that he is close on his decision. Last week in his first game, he had 8 catches, 152 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Defensive back Michael Nesbitt of Lauderdale Lakes, Florida, committed to Kentucky. USC was in his final 10. 2018 defensive back Christian Tutt, Thompson, Georgia, has a top 11 with Clemson on the list. Georgia, Florida State, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Southern Cal, Texas A&M, Miami, Alabama, UCLA, Florida. In basketball, 7-1 Jason Cutt of Socastee has scheduled an official visit to USC for the weekend of September 9th. According to his coach, Tulane, DePaul, and East Carolina also appear in line for official visits, and Western Carolina has been working Cutt hard for a visit. USC still leads, according to Coach Derek Hilton. Point guard Jay Morant of Crestwood has an official to Murray State September 1st and USC September 16th. And 6'11 Luke Garza of Washington has not decided on his 5th visit, but he is still in touch with USC's Frank Martin and Bruce Shingler and is still considering them for that final official visit. That's recruiting. That's the first hour. Top of the hour break is coming up.
Live from Columbia, this is Sports Talk on the South Carolina Radio Network. Be a part of tonight's show. Call us at 800-956-7266 or email talkback@sportstalksc.com. Now, here are your hosts for Sports Talk, Phil Kornblut, Kevin McCrary, and Tom Hayes.
Okay, we're back at Sports Talk, South Carolina Radio Network. Phil Kornblut and Kevin McCrary with you on this Friday night. Hope you've had a great week. Looking forward to a terrific weekend. NFL preseason games cranking up tonight. The Panthers are at home to take on the New England Patriots in the third game of their preseason schedule. Third game of preseason of the preseason, usually the game where most of the frontline players play about 3 quarters. So it's the one preseason game to go buy a ticket for it and get a feeling like you're at a regular season game. Some other things going on. Jacob Eason at Georgia. He went with the first team and getting reps today at Georgia against the scout team in their practice. Grayson Lambert went with the second team, and then Eason went back in. So they're keeping a close watch on that to see who emerges as the number one quarterback there. Talk out of Georgia today is that Ralph Webb may be getting more carries when they take on the Gamecocks. And why wouldn't you give him the football? Why not line up and try and run the ball at South Carolina if you're Vanderbilt when you've got when you've got a running back the quality of Ralph Webb who can run against most anybody if you give him a little bit of room. South Carolina's defensive front facing Vanderbilt's offensive line. That'll be a pretty good matchup, I think. And up front, Vanderbilt projects to start a couple of seniors on the offensive line and a junior and a couple of sophomores. So no names that I really recognize there in terms of notoriety or anything like that. So maybe that'll be a good matchup for South Carolina's defensive front, man, against Vandy's offensive front. You got to control Ralph Webb. If you can do that and you make Kyle Shermer kind of be the guy to beat you, then you got a pretty good chance. At times, Vandy has had a successful passing game, and they've had good receivers. C.J. Duncan is the guy you really have to worry about at wide receiver with this Vandy team. And South Carolina with their new secondary, more or less, in terms of the approach, some of the same players, but a different approach. We'll see how they handle going head up on Vanderbilt's receivers. I would certainly expect that to be the case. A couple of more notes on Auburn. Of course, Sean White announced as Auburn's starting quarterback, getting the nod over Jeremy Johnson and junior college transfer John Franklin III. In fact, we'll hear from Gus Malzahn a little bit later on, some comments from him about choosing White as a starting quarterback. As far as the health of the Georgia team, with the exception of the safety who just got in some trouble, true freshman receiver Kyle Davis was back in practice. He's had a bit of a foot problem, but he's ready to go. He's the former USC commitment, very highly touted coming out of high school. They like him a lot, and they think he's going to be an immediate contributor to their offense. Receiver Tony Stevens, who's been hampered with a minor leg injury, is back at full speed as well. Graduate transfer defensive back Marshall Taylor, who didn't start practicing until Tuesday, is also now back fully in practice and participating and getting a lot of work. The only projected major contributor not practicing is cornerback Jamel Dean. He's out indefinitely with a knee injury, just like Jeremiah Denson is. So that's the update from Auburn. At Florida, some news on some players there. With their opener coming up, they're going to get back 2 key contributors in practice after a brief suspension. Cornerback Jalen Tabor, tight end Shayante Lewis. They were suspended from the season opener and from practice for a week for a serious fight in fall camp. Jim McElwain has confirmed they will return to practice. That was this week that they were coming back to practice this week. Status of a handful of other players remains unclear. McElwain has still not received word from the university on whether star receiver Antonio Callaway, who was found not responsible earlier this month for an alleged sexual assault, if he'll be able to play in the opener. They're still working on that. He also did not indicate whether freshman receivers Tyree Cleveland and Rick Wells would be able to play in the opener. Both have been battling hamstring injuries. They probably won't need any of those guys. They open up against UMass on September 3rd. Virginia Tech has named its starting quarterback, Justin Fuente, naming junior college transfer Gerard Evans as his starting quarterback. He beat out Brendan Motley and Joshua Jackson for the job. NC State quarterback Ryan Finley's been given a 6-year of eligibility. He transferred from Boise State, got a medical red shirt because he missed 10 games last year because of an ankle injury, and he also missed most of 2014 with a shoulder injury. So now that he's at NC State, he's going to get a 6th year of eligibility. All right, there you go with some notes around the SEC and the ACC. Now, Clemson, of course, getting ready for their game at Auburn. The Tiger offense expected to be, they're expected to go out and be right on par with where they left off last year. And if you remember where they left off last year, we're talking about a 500-yard performance in that loss to Alabama. Folks are expecting them to step right in and pick it up from right there. Based on the camp performance so far, there's no reason to think the Tigers won't do that. Here is co-offensive coordinator Tony Elliott, as he talked with the media earlier this week, updating things from the offensive side of things.
Going good. A chance now that camp's over, back in school, getting a good opportunity to take a look at them on film and kind of figure out what they're going to do. Obviously, you're looking at what Coach Steele did at LSU last year. You're looking at what he did this spring in the spring game, and trying to just turn over every stone, just anticipation of what we're going to see. But it's been good prep so far.
Without giving anything away, you see any tendencies that are similar between what he did at LSU and what maybe when he's back here at Clemson?
You see a lot of similarities, but you also see some things that he's doing differently. Obviously, he's got an Alabama background, so he's he's worked with Nick Saban, so he kind of knows that odd front. So you see him jump in and out of structure a lot like he did here. He can play odd, he can play 4 down, he can play man coverage, he can play zone. Other guys do a really good job of disguising coverage. So you see a lot of similarities of when he was here, but you also see a couple of changes as well that you've seen him develop over the years.
A bit of a test you like that defensive line to kind of open up with in the first game, see just how ready your offensive line is.
Oh, yeah, looking forward to the challenge. We ended with a great defensive line, and we practice every day against a really, really good defensive line. And so I think our guys are going to be up to the challenge, and, they're going to be ready to play. It's going to be a hostile environment. And so just making sure that everybody's prepared, knowing what we're doing. If we know our plan, we'll have an opportunity to execute.
Any changes as far as the offensive line goes, or pretty much status quo as far as the 1 and 2s?
Yeah, pretty much status quo coming out of that last scrimmage. But got to have Big John ready to play. Got to have Maverick ready to play. Taylor Hearn, all those guys ready to play. And then again, same thing. You got young tackles going into that environment. We're very, very confident in Ankrum and Pollard, but also having some of those older guys ready to play in that situation in case we need them.
Where do you have Simpson primarily?
Simpson's been playing at left guard. He's been playing at left guard. That's where he played in high school. That's where he's most confident. And he's a guy that has a skill set that you can move him, to a tackle position in the future. But the big thing is getting him ready to play because physically, he was very, very impressive coming in the doors. Mentally, don't want to overload him. Get him comfortable, get him confident, and then we can cross-train him later.
I can't hear you.
All right, that's Tony Elliott, Clemson co-offensive coordinator, talking a little bit about facing off against Kevin Steele and that Auburn defense, and then about his offensive line and way the Tigers have prepared. I kind of think, K-Mac, here it is Friday. It's been a long, hot August, a hard camp for everybody. I think people are ready to tee it up and see what you've got. Of course, it begins tomorrow here in South Carolina with Charleston Southern playing up at North Dakota State. Looking forward to seeing how the Buccaneers are going to come out of the gate against the 5-time defending national champion up in Fargo.
The Fargo Dome will be rocking tomorrow. We got football this weekend. Finally.
Hallelujah. Okay, we'll be right back here on Sports Talk. Don't go away.
Oh, Shaq. Palau.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Scientifical sound, search thought, silencing supervised sound, better talk.
Kills 10 times, talented, too tough. Take that, challengers, get it tuned up. Universal, unique, untouched, unadulterated, the raw, uncut.
Today.
Sports Talk South Carolina Radio Network. Don't forget the high school scoreboard shows coming up tonight across the states here on South Carolina Radio Network. You can also hear the scoreboards posted on our website and follow the scores on our website all tonight and through the weekend. And the scoreboards come down at 10 o'clock, 10:30, and 11 o'clock. And don't forget to follow all our high school coverage here on Sports Talk, a service of Farm Bureau Insurance. With new auto insurance rates from Farm Bureau Insurance, you could be saving a whole lot of money. Even if you've received a quote before, rates are now more competitive than ever. Get a free quote today from your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. We've got great high school football tonight, of course, around the state of South Carolina. Hopefully you're going to get out and check out a ball game and get yourself ready for football this weekend with some NFL action. Charleston Southern playing up at North Dakota State's, and some NFL preseason games as well through the weekend. Couple of more weekends before we get to the real games from the NFL folks, which we always, of course, racing up at Michigan as well, where Joey Logano won the pole at 201.698 miles an hour. Jimmy Johnson, second fastest at 201.523. Then it's Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, and Chase Elliott. Alex Bowman is in the 88 this weekend for Dale Earnhardt Jr. He qualified sixth. Then it's Ryan Blaney, Jamie McMurray, Carl Edwards, and Ryan Newman. The full Monty on NASCAR coming up here on Sports Talk at the bottom of the hour. We'll talk more about Michigan. Get Monty's thoughts on that. The final couple of weekends here before we close out the regular season and get into the chase and the movement in the standings, trying to get 16 guys in line for postseason racing. We'll talk about that and more with Monty coming up at the bottom of the hour. Now, we were talking Clemson and Auburn football, and word came out yesterday from Gus Malzahn at Auburn that it's going to be Sean White as his starting quarterback this year. Sean White, a highly talented recruit a couple of years ago. He saw plenty of game action last year. I'm not sure he is the fan favorite at this point in time, but apparently in camp he was the one who did the best job of moving the offense. Not just that, I think ball protection and avoiding turnovers, things of that nature, I think that played a big factor as well in the ultimate decision. Here's Malzahn as he explained his decision yesterday regarding Sean White being the starting quarterback.
Today we also named our starting quarterback. It'll be Sean White. Will be our starting quarterback against Clemson. Like I said all along, it was a very good race. All three guys competed at a very high level. Just felt like it was time to name a starter, and Sean won the job. And I think it'll be important that he'll have a good full week to work specifically just with the ones. We've really tried to do a good job of all three guys getting equal opportunities. Jeremy had a very good fall camp. Very competitive. He's much improved. He's in a very good spot. John Franklin competed extremely hard. And like I said before, he improved greatly from the spring. Of course, we expected him to. We've got 3, guys that can run our offense, but Sean White's the first one that will be out there. We're excited for Sean. He's earned it. He's a guy that has experience in our offense last year. He's a tough guy. He's in a good spot. He's in a good spot to lead this team. The team's going to rally around him, so I'm excited for him.
All right, Gus Malzahn. K-Mac, 7-6 last year. They did win their bowl game. They very easily could have had a much better year. They lost by 8 points at home to Mississippi State, 9. They lost by 8 points. Okay. They lost by 8 points in quadruple overtime at Arkansas. You remember that one, 54-46. Yeah. They lost by 8 points at home to Ole Miss. They lost by 7 points at home to Georgia. They weren't they were 3-4 at home last year. So you're talking about they don't lose at home. They lost 4 games at home last year.
They don't lose at home. Corn, obviously they've lost a game at Jordan
you
Hare
were making
Stadium.
the argument that that's a place that they never lose.
I didn't say
Clemson's
never.
going to go in there and wet their
never.
pants. You said Clemson's going to go in there and wet their pants because they're going into Jordan Hare Stadium.
Wait. They're not going to get off the bus. I doubt Clemson even goes now.
They haven't. Clemson hasn't won in Auburn since 1950, though.
I know. See, Corn doesn't want to hear that stat, but he wants to tell you what the record was last year because that apparently matters for this year. That matters.
I'm
but
just
your old stats don't matter,
happy.
but Corn's old stats matter.
I'm so happy that the Jarmart is part of the staff to bring us, that kind of statistical, historical relevance. Okay,
he goes in the dark corner of the internet.
No, I really wasn't talking about the losses at home, so to speak. What I'm getting at here is they weren't very far from being a good team with a good record last year. Just that where they have to really improve is their defense, and maybe Kevin Steele's going to be the answer. Why do people want to pick on Kevin Steele?
Oh man, I you know what? I like Kevin. I don't think he likes me at all. I mean, the only thing he ever did to me is yell at me or look at me like I asked the dumbest question in the world. I think you're the only person Kevin Steele likes in the media in this state, which is surprising.
That's not
Kevin Steele
unique.
and Eddie Fogler, who
unique.
hate everybody in the media, somehow like Cornblood. I do not understand how that happened, but that happened somehow.
Because they know who the power brokers are. You line yourself with the movers and shakers, but they gave up over 400 yards a game last year. Which is obviously way too much. Now, their offense wasn't up to snuff either, 370 yards and 27.5 points per game. And, they beat Louisville to open the season. And maybe people thought, okay, this is Auburn's back. And then they struggled. They had to go into overtime to beat Jacksonville State. And then that kind of raised a few eyebrows. Then they lost at LSU. Then they lost to Mississippi State. And things just started to slip away from them at that point. I still think, as much as I want to give Auburn credit and play the devil's advocate here and think that this could be a down-to-the-wire kind of game, I just can't see it. I just don't think Clemson can be slowed down.
Can't be
like
stopped.
I said before.
They're never going to lose again. You have said that, actually. You have said that. They're not going to lose to Auburn or anybody.
The only way is if Hugo misses an extra point. That's the only way they're going to lose ever again, missing an extra point
kicker
in clutch time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Blame it on the kicker.
Always the kicker.
Yes. So looking forward to, you're going to go to Auburn. I'm going to go to Vanderbilt. Looking forward to getting to next week and getting down to the serious breakdowns of X's and O's. And I want to also mention this. He made the comment, Malzahn did, about announcing Sean White, and he's the number one guy, and giving him the extra time they're working with the ones. You wonder at South Carolina, even though they haven't announced it, and nobody's really saying anything, if they are running more with the ones and inside the walls there, they know he's going to be the guy. They're just going to wait till game time to trot him out there.
Yeah. I mean, somebody is getting more of the one snaps this week. I doubt they're rotating every other day again. Now, we're not going to hear from Muschamp. tomorrow or Sunday. We'll talk to him Monday, and he's not going to tell us anything. Let's be real. So, I mean, the players, that's where it would slip out, or a manager or somebody. But I have a feeling that Muschamp has, read the no leaks riot act to everybody in that program. You leak and that is a pretty strong word, or you leak, you're benched. But I think it will leak out. I do. But that said, I still think we're going to get wind of who's going to start. One of these web guys, somebody is going to float it out on Tuesday or Wednesday. Who's going to start? That's my prediction. And it'll be Orth. Yeah. That's my other prediction.
Right. I mean, that seems to be the common thinking, simply because he's the experienced guy and has been there, and there doesn't seem to be great separation among the three. Hell, it could be Jake Bentley trotting out there for all we know.
No, it's not going to be Jake Bentley.
Orth told us that today.
Yeah, it's a two-man job.
That he played.
Yeah, you could hear him say it's a two-man
maybe
race.
They told him to say that. Maybe they're throwing us off.
Lie. We want you to go out there and lie.
Off the course here, and maybe JB's going to go out there with the first group and pass for 500 yards, set all kind of records. Okay, we're coming back to full Monty on NASCAR right around this turn. We are back, Sports Talk, here on a Friday night in South Carolina. Good to have you with us as we head into another great sports weekend. We've been talking a lot of football, of course. Let's catch up on NASCAR, the full Monty on NASCAR with Monty Dutton. We're racing up at Michigan this weekend, where the racing is always exciting and the speeds, generally speaking, are always high. And, Monty, that's been the case so far today in qualifying and in practice. Drivers well above 200 miles an hour. And, you know, it seems to me like the drivers really love racing at Michigan. It's one of those tracks where I guess they never have to lift, do they?
A little bit, and they probably will have to lift more because of lower downforce in the race. They don't have to lift when they're in qualifying because they can take whatever line around the track they want to. But as the day goes along, they will. Drivers love Michigan because very wide, has many lanes, has many options. I think it's the same reason that a right-handed hitter who hits long fly balls like Fenway Park, or a left-handed pull hitter like Yankee Stadium. I think that Ruben Smith used to say that the last person you should ever ask about building a racetrack are drivers because they want something that's easy. And Michigan is a good show. It gives you enough rope to hang yourself. But drivers love tracks like that because it's easy for them.
And it's always a very fast track. And, the banking is not nearly like it is at, say, Daytona and Talladega. But is the drafting – maybe the drafting's not as violent as it is at those other tracks as well. But the drafting at Michigan, from your experience covering there, how draft?
The draft is sort of a half a phenomenon. At Michigan – the draft is an effective tool on the straightaways, but there's so many lanes and they get strung out. And so through the turns, there's not that much effective drafting. But it's kind of like you draft down the straightaways, then tuck or try to find another lane, and they split off to other places when they get in the turn.
As we go into this race, we go in with the news that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is going to be sidelined longer. He's not at Michigan. He's not going to be at Darlington next weekend. What are you hearing behind the scenes about his health? And, I mean, obviously, this concussion, much more severe than maybe first thought by those not inside his camp.
Well, I'm not an expert, and I always try not to be one when I'm not, but it's my understanding just from reading the transcripts and things like that, that it's basically a situation where whatever's wrong may disappear tomorrow. It may disappear in a month. And so he can't race until he's approved and there's no problem, whatever the diagnostic tests happen to be. So it's just on a holding pattern. I don't think anyone expects him to never be able to race again. But I think it becomes interesting at each level because, first of all, he's still in position. If he wants to race, he can make the chase. But that's going away. He's not going to go to Richmond and make the chase even if he wins it. So that's a speculation we can set aside. The second question becomes, if you can't make the chase, how much is it worth continuing? Is it worth just sitting out the rest of the season and making sure you're fine? But you see, that's balanced off by the sponsorship demands. People that paid so much amount of money to have Dale Earnhardt Jr. driving that car. Nobody's going to put him in the car if he's not fit to race. But if he is fit to race, there's a lot of money that says he needs to. So, financial considerations always come into that. It's not just a matter of whether let's blow off the rest of the season and make sure we're ready for next year. It may be more complicated than that.
Yeah, but for the 88 team, is it somewhat offset by having a Jeff Gordon sitting in the cockpit in place of Junior?
Well, it is in terms of prestige. Gordon has done okay, but I think in fairness to Gordon, he was supposed to be retired, and there's a certain rustiness that comes from not driving, not to mention not expecting to drive again. So I think that if he stays in the car, which I really don't think he has any intention of doing, if I'm not mistaken, he's not in the car this weekend. Alex Bowen is, but he's going to be at Darlington. So I think Jeff is very much a reluctant person who's doing it because he feels an obligation to the company. But I don't think Jeff Gordon's heart is in it, to tell you the truth. I think he's just doing doing him a good job and probably not tearing up much stuff. But for my watching, I don't think Gordon's a probably better driver than half the people in the field, but I don't think he's particularly sharp, and I don't believe he's that motivated.
You are right. Bowman is in the 88. Why would, this being, relatively speaking, an easier race on the drivers, why would they not have Jeff in this weekend? Was there some other conflict that is preventing him from being in the car?
Yes, I don't think it's a matter of not wanting Jeff. It's a matter of him not being available, him having a commitment that he'd made in advance that he said, I can't do Michigan, several weeks ago.
Yeah. All right, talking with Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR here on Sports Talk. They're racing up at Michigan this weekend. As far as the chase, of course, we're coming right down to the wire here. Richmond, the final cutoff in the regular season. 10 are in for sure at this point. Tony Stewart, Chris Buescher, they look pretty good with a win each. What do you see behind those 12, the maneuvering and the developments up and down the line for those trying to get in?
Well, it's still a matter of if this happens, what then? Because, first of all, I really think, they always do, it's like a magic number in baseball. Tony Stewart's going to make it. He's really in. He's not going to lose unless something horrible happens. He's in. And I think the likelihood is that Buescher is in because he finished with a top 5 finish last week. And he's in 30th place, and Ford Motor Company is probably in a position to put him in good enough equipment that he will stay in the top 30. And if something happens that he's not, I would expect some things will change to make that, because the person that he is holding off for 30th place is his teammate. And since he has a win, it would be very surprising to me if his teammate races past him when his teammate can't make the chase. So he can get into a wreck and something can happen, but I even think that he would probably. I think he's reaching the top 30. He's done that, and I expect that there are enough powers that want him in the chase. So they want another Ford in the chase. He'll be in it, but that's not. You can't control the 19-car pileup that you run into. So it's not a 6, but it's likely. So there you go. You got 12, and then you're just in the same slippery slope. What if? Richie Stenhouse was second last week. What if he wins? What if Casey Kane wins? Well, every time that happens, somebody slips off, or Jamie McMurray, or Chase Elliott. Somebody's going to make the chase on points, but it gets really worrisome. If somebody behind him wins, and that puts the likelihood of another chase person from a win, then all of a sudden that makes it very important, say, for McMurray to win. And people get a little bit more desperate. And that's exactly what NASCAR wanted.
Well, it does make for a great conversation leading up to the end of the regular season, and a little bit of drama. You're right, a little bit of drama as we try to fill out these final spots. Darlington next week. I know that's a place near and dear to your heart, and a week of build-up and anticipation for you leading to the Bojangles Southern 500.
Oh, I think it's a great show, and I actually think that most of the big hype things that come up in racetracks are things that don't get me that excited. But all of these paint schemes of throwbacks to old-time cars, I actually think that the Wood Brothers throwback is the one that gets me excited because I was a David Pearson fan in my youth. But I think a lot of those race cars are absolutely gorgeous, and since half the time they go out there on the track and they got a sponsorship for this race only, and I can't tell them apart anyway. I can tell them apart now by what they used to be.
Yeah. You and a whole bunch of old race fans, huh?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Monty, as always, we thank you and have yourself a great racing weekend, a great football weekend, and we look forward to getting with you next week leading into Darlington.
I look forward to that, too. Thanks for having me, Phil.
All right, Monty, thank you very much. Monty Dutton, the full Monty on NASCAR here on Sports Talk as we go racing at Michigan this weekend. Should be a great race up in the beautiful state of Michigan. Hopefully the weather will hold up and they won't have any delays. And we'll be right back. More Sports Talk coming up. Yeah. Okay, Boston College preview.
2015 was a rough year for Boston College as they did not have a single win in the ACC. The Eagles finished 3-9 overall and gave head coach Steve Adazio his first losing record with the school. Adazio took over the leading position in 2013 and led the Eagles to 7-6 winning seasons in his first 2 years. One of the reasons for the wounded 2015 season was a rash of injuries that took over the BC roster. Adazio to have a healthy roster in his time as head coach, but will now get his chance.
We're just young, but so there's great competition. When we got here, there was really competition. It was a spotty roster with deficiencies all over the place. Now, it's not the deficiencies anymore. Now it's about competing and guys getting older and maturing, and that's what it is now. But the roster is healthy now. It's about the development of our team as opposed to trying to make one side happen more than the other. And that's really important. You have that cohesion so that you can develop. I just feel like we're in a foot race for development. That's all. But that's fun. I mean, that's what you want to do.
Oddly enough, the Eagles had the best total defense and the second best rushing defense in the nation last season. They allowed under 3 yards per rushing attempt, which has led the nation in the past 2 years. Unfortunately for the Eagles, the roster took a hit this year, and 3 starting defensive players will not be returning. Defensive tackle Connor Wujak, linebacker Steven Daniels, and defensive back Justin Simmons all picked up ACC honors and were drafted by NFL teams. Adding more assault to injury, BC's defensive coordinator Don Brown left to coach at Michigan this year. His replacement will be veteran coordinator and former Richmond head coach Jim Reed. On a more positive note for Eagles fans, this will be the first team under Adazio that has a veteran offensive line.
Really, when you think about good offensive lines, they're usually playing in their senior and redshirt senior year. In the last 2 years of eligibility is when they're hitting their stride. That's what we had before. We had about a stride. Right now, we're a ways from that.
Center John Baker, guard Chris Lindstrom, and tackle Aaron Montero will all return for their starting positions, and they hope to offer protection to the starting QB. Speaking of quarterbacks, the competition starts with dual threat Darius Wade. Wade played just 3 games last season due to a season-ending injury. He brought the Eagles their only wins of the season and totaled over 200 yards with 2 touchdowns and an interception. They'll face competition from Kentucky graduate transfer Patrick Towles, who has a considerably different playing style. Towles is known as more of a pocket passer and completed over 56% of his passes for 2,100 yards with the Wildcats. Adazio was pleased with how both quarterbacks threw during spring.
What we're really working on right now is our throw game. We spent a lot of time on it, and it looked good today. I'm excited about it. These guys are throwing the ball well, and we're catching it, and that'll bring balance to our run game. So I'm pretty fired up about day one in terms of watching the throw game in the fundamental stages of development right now.
The Eagles will start their season in the thick of the ACC as they kick off against Georgia Tech on September 3rd. Then a game against in-state rival Massachusetts will follow in Week 2. They'll face more of challenging opponents starting in Week 6 with Clemson, Louisville in Week 9, and at Florida State in Week 10. The regular season will come to a close against Wake Forest at BB&T Field on November 26th. For Sports Talk,
Okay, Carson Mason with the preview of Boston College. What a weird kind of year they had last year. As you heard her say, their defense was really good enough to win a lot of games. Their only wins last year, they won 3 games. They beat Maine, they beat Howard, and they beat Northern Illinois. Lost everything else, including the last 8 in a row. Of course, they went winless in the ACC, came back. But except for Clemson, which scored 34 on them in a 34-17 game. And, I mean, that was a competitive game at Clemson. Clemson was ranked number 5 at the time on October 7th. I mean, they didn't give up more than 26 points to anybody else they lost to, and that was to Virginia Tech. I mean, Notre Dame only scored 19 on them. NC State scored 24. Heck, they lost to Florida State on a Friday night up there, only 14-0. They just had no offense whatsoever last year. Fix the offense to a large degree and have the defense somewhat like it was last year, and this team will be a tough out.
Yeah, and I like Adazio a lot. He's an offensive guy. So you've got to think that they're going to get better in that regard. Where they've really struggled is at quarterback. They haven't had their kind of guy at quarterback, or they've had young guys, inexperienced guys that they've had to thrust into duty because of graduation. That was their issue last year, it seemed. So I think they're going to be better. I'm ready to go out and say they're going to be a better team, and that's a tough game. Another one, I know we still have some time, Corn, but that's a Friday night game. It's going to throw off your normal schedule, an easy game to overlook. Clemson better bring the lunch pail to Boston with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And especially, I think Tigers should be undefeated when they go up to Boston College, so they'll have a lot riding on the game. But, playing on a Friday night, you have to adjust. Unfortunately, it's what's the difference in playing on a Friday night and a Thursday night, mentally speaking, except that you never, when you go to college, you never expect to play on Friday night again unless you're in one of the minor leagues like the WAC or the WAC, the SAC, or the ACC. You know what I mean? It's really embarrassing for the ACC to play games on a Friday night.
I mean, why do they even show their face
seriously,
in public?
Don't you think it's embarrassing for a Power 5 conference to play games on Friday night?
Well,
to make a Clemson play a game on a Friday night, to make a Florida State play a game on a Friday night? Come on.
They do it. And I don't think they're embarrassed when they're cashing those checks from the 4-letter network.
Well, they get the money on Saturday. I'd say, heck, no, we're not playing on Friday night. All right, we're playing on Saturday. And, you're already making us play all over the clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 3:30, 7, 7:30, 8. Okay, fine. But now you're making us play, and we're playing on Thursday nights, okay? ACC has a nice Thursday night package. Why they felt they need the exposure of a Friday night when you are limited in that you're going up against high school football. Now, your fans are going to be there. Clemson fans will be there. They'll be tuned in. They'll be there in presence, in body, as many as can get up to Boston. But there aren't many places that'll be like that. They'll lose fans to high school football in many cases.
Yeah.
As they should. And why should you?
And that was what the big issue was when they first started doing the Friday games, was infringing on the high school football racket. But it's not going away. I don't like it. I don't like it either, but I don't fault conferences that are trying to secure networks with the ESPN and the ACC network, SEC network. Now, I know there are teams like Florida and Georgia that have flat out said, Alabama, we're not playing on Thursday. We're playing on Saturdays.
Well, and more power to them.
Well, they can do it. Now, maybe you could argue that Clemson and Florida State, they could have that way. But South Carolina, you look at South Carolina, they've kind of made opening the college football season on Thursday night their thing. That's kind of been their thing for the past decade or so. One of the first games is South Carolina versus somebody.
And let's also remember, too, that they've had an attractive head coach in that position. ESPN wanted to be all over Lou Holtz when he took over. All right, they wanted to watch him walk up and down the sideline. Then when Spurrier came in, they wanted to be all over Spurrier. And now, it's good for Muschamp and them that they get this chance on Thursday night coming to do the same thing. He's not exactly the same media appeal as the other two, but it is good for his program if you go out and win and show people that you're making progress. Want to mention next week, we really come at you hard. We'll be at Wofford on Monday and then at Limestone on Tuesday, but we also unveil all our regulars of football season next week. Corey Miller, Will Merritt, Chuck Reedy. Steve Tannehill becomes a regular on Sports Talk next week. We'll have the Governors back. We'll have our man from Paramount Sports, Lee Sterling. The regular gang will be here to get you through a great football season. So that all comes your way next week on Sports Talk, including football, actual games. Muschamp on Monday. We'll have that covered for you, too. Thank you, K-Mac. Thank you, Jarmart. Everybody have a great weekend. Enjoy yourselves. Follow the high school scoreboard shows tonight, and we'll see you Monday.